Today we speak to Andres from Symetric. We talk about the importance of having strong values and strong principles. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, where we unlock the secrets of modern HR. I'm Benjamin, your host. Join us as we shed light on today's HR universe with HR leaders and innovators from across the globe. Whether you're an HR pro, a business leader, or just curious about the future of work, this is your shortcut to the forefront of HR innovation. Brought to you by Hire, the AI talent attraction platform. Welcome to the latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm looking forward to my guest today. Andres, it's great to have you.
Ben, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. Super excited for our talk today.
Amazing. Andres, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you?
Happy to. So I'm Andres Mercado, born and raised in Bogotá, Colombia. I've been working in HR for the past 10 years. I'm a psychologist. I started my career in HR in a digital marketing agency in Colombia. I worked there for a couple of years, maybe more so like 4 years, as an HR business partner. Then moved to a senior role as a business partner as well in EY, Ernst and Young, where I handled regional performance, development, and employee relationship um, initiatives and strategies and so on. And after a year, I moved to Symetric, the company I work for right now. And I've been here for the past almost 5 years, 4.5 years, as the head of people experience and culture. So I'm mainly in charge of all things HR, all things people, but mainly making sure we have a strong culture that scales as we continue growing as a company.
I found that incredibly interesting that your title is Experience and Culture. That kind of sets the scene, I guess.
For sure. It does. Yeah, we believe in building high performance culture. That's why my title includes culture. But the part with people experience is that we also believe that you need to have a good experience on your team. You need to build a company and like processes and practices and rituals where high performance strive, right? Like they like to work here and they have the ability to perform at their best. So that's why we include the people experience in our title on the department.
I think the interesting thing is nobody who's listening would probably say, well, I don't want a high performance culture.
Yeah.
It's, however, really difficult to achieve that. So,
Yeah.
how did you, or how have you approached this so far? So, it's probably quite a lengthy process.
For sure, it does. So it is. So basically, I joined the company in July 2019. At the moment, the company was made of probably 20 people. I could, I probably I'm the 20th hired for the company. Um, and fun fact, I joined the company on the same date as our head of revenue. So that's something you probably won't see on other startups and other companies, and that's like a super um, fun insight. And I joined the company on an early stage with the objective of building a strong culture that would set the stage and be a guide for future behaviors, and be a clear guide on how we think in Symetric and how we behave in Symetric, and that being our principles. I can go a little bit deeper on our principles, in a while, but those principles have helped us maintain that high performance culture as we grow as a company. So today we have 300 people, 300 team members in 13 different countries. So that's quite a big growth from those 20 that we had when I joined.
Oh, it's actually pretty magnificent. Um, can you can you tell us a bit more about the spirit? Given, well, as you said, so you hire the head of revenue and the head of people or head of people
Yeah.
experience on the same day. So probably before that, it was still a small firm, and not many structures had been implemented yet. So what was the spirit back then?
Yeah, not at all. So when I joined the company, it was fully horizontal. Alejo, our founder, was making sales. Basically, he was leading sales. Uh, I believe there was a couple of salespeople by that time, but not heads, not anything. Just SDRs slash account executive making the ball roll and start finding some traction. Um, and people was actually run by our graphic designer. So by the graphic designer they had at the time, she had been working for the company for a long time. So she was doing recruiting, she was doing employee experience, she was doing onboarding. So they weren't quite any structures or teams or names or roles or not even processes around HR for sure. So once I joined, and Juancho is our head of sales from that time, and continues to be. We started building teams. So my role at the moment was head of team engineering. So that's quite an interesting title as well, right? So team
Indeed.
engineering was the spirit to for me to come to the company and build teams, from more of a engineering perspective, even though I'm a psychologist, and not from a traditional messy side of organizational design.
Well, how did you approach things back then? So, I think in a situation when you're still a team of 20 people, and well, back then you just arrived from a very, very large organization. One
Yeah.
could approach things in a hyper structured way, so to say. So let's say, okay, let's set everything on hold for 2 years. We have to set up some structures, have, we have to write 3,000 pages of policy, or well, the other extreme would be then probably be like, hey, let's just hire and let's just do stuff. So how do you find the best middle ground?
Yeah, for sure. That was actually the main challenge for sure for me. So I came from a big four, right? Consulting big four, 270K employees all over the world, to a 20 people company in a small office. So my main challenge was that I had like a quality bar that was fixed, right? That
Mhm.
a fixed quality bar, and everything that I did needed to be above that quality bar. So
Mhm.
I remember the first meeting with Alejo, our CEO, in one of that small office in front of a blackboard, and we were talking about some ideas on onboarding, on hiring, on structuring a culture and HR practice. Um, and he was super excited about some of the ideas I brought to the table, and the ones we created. And he told me, okay, let's work on this, probably a couple or three of those ideas, and let's see how it goes. So he told me, let's work on this, prepare a draft, right? Start working on how this would look. And in my mind, with that quality bar, that would probably take 2 to 3 months to implement. That's going to be something robust, that needed to be seen from a variety of aspects and perspectives. And he told me, let's see this at the end of the day. So
Mhm.
from 3 months to the end of the day, a couple of hours. So that was quite challenging for me on mindset wise, or on quality bars and so on. And from that experience I had with Alejo is where we started creating our principles, the ones I told you before, and we still have and implement into all of our processes.
Before we come to the principles, I would like to know why the entire people topic seems to be like very important to the founders. And one could also argue, okay, well, so is people thing we should focus on, or is it like
Yeah.
product? Is it revenue, or is it whatever? Why were they very keen to get someone from a big four company with lots of experience, with well, lots of knowledge in that space to set this up in a structured way? Why was it important to the founders?
I actually asked that question in my interview with Symetric, with Alejo. So I asked him the same question, and he told me two things. Thing number one is that they've seen other founders made the mistake of bringing HR later on in their company. So usually HR comes to companies or startups to fix problems, right? To fix things that are not working right, to fix cultural things that are not working, processes that are broken, and so on. People that is living, struggling to hire talent, and so on. So that number one, not having that approach of bringing HR reactively but proactively to build with a strong base. And then the second point was they've seen other companies, other cultures that they didn't want to have in their company. They've seen other cultures, successful companies that had quite a toxic culture, organizational culture that they didn't want to bring to the table. So they said, we need to invest in this. We need to invest our time, our money, our resources to make sure we build from scratch the culture we want to have right now and the culture we want to have when we are a bigger company, right? So that's why I joined on such an early stage.
I find that incredibly interesting what you said. So, toxic culture, however successful, how is that? How is it possible these days to have a toxic culture, however being
Yeah.
successful as a company? In my mind, that kind of contradicts itself.
Yeah, it does. It does. For sure, it does. So what you get is a company that is made of contradictory messages, right? So the typical company, when you have big numbers, right? Good ARR, good revenue coming in through the door, but then you have low retention of employees. You have big numbers on turnover on your employees, low satisfaction numbers on employee engagement, and so on. So people actually work there because of the title, because of the company name, and so on, to put that name on their resume or CV and so on, and then say I'm X this, X that, and so on. But the company struggles to retain talent or develop talent or create long-lasting relationship with them. So that's like a mix between revenue is coming through the door, but employees are also going through the door, right?
Probably like the way out.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I find it incredibly interesting that you guys defined culture as something so important. And well, before we come to the principles, one last question. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
so, um, so who drives the culture? Is it you? Is it Alejo? Who does drive the culture in the end?
Yeah, so basically, you could say I'm the main responsible for our organizational culture, but we do have something that's amazing and that has made me a part of the company for so long and that has made me believe culture is important is that Alejo is a number one sponsor of the culture. So Santi is too. Santi is Alejo's co-founder and the COO. And he's a cultural ambassador from his perspective on operational side and leading the team on the day-to-day basis. But Alejo is a cultural ambassador in the storytelling of the culture, right? So that's something we do side by side. So we usually have some rituals like all hands. We have weekly all hands. With different topics each week, right? So 4 different topics, so one each week, then it's a cycle and so on. So we have monthly cultural all hands. And those all hands are usually led by Alejo and me side by side. So that's something that sends the message to the team that culture is not something HR is leading. Culture is something that is a message from the CEO, from the importance we give to that topic.
It's super impressive. Okay, now tell us about the principles. So
Okay. I actually love to talk about culture and our principles. So when we started creating them, we created something we called the 3+1, right? So the three part of the 3+1 was explosive focus, limitless excellence, and relentless evolution. As you see, those are like punchlines with 2 words that meant something that needed to be balanced, right? So explosive focus is speed, prioritizing speed. but focusing on the right thing, right? That's explosive focus. Then you have limitless excellence. Limitless excellence is going above and beyond everything we need to do to seek that excellence and that quality that I was talking about. Then we have relentless evolution, always improving, always looking to be your better self. And being relentless is more of knowing that building a company is more of a marathon than a sprint, right? That's like a famous phrase you should usually hear in startups. Um, and the plus one is enjoy the struggle. And enjoy the struggle is probably one of my favorites and something we usually tell our candidates, because building a company is not easy. It's quite a struggle, right? It has it's had ups and downs, challenges, but you need to be passionate and you need to be building a company with that kind of people that thrives to be in the middle of those challenges and struggling on day-to-day basis. If you're looking for something super structured, calm, when you know what you're going to be doing from 8 to 5, this is not the perfect place for you, for sure. So enjoy the struggle is something we have as our principle. um, so yeah, those principles have stayed as the core of our culture. They've evolved in wording and how we tell the story. We now have mindset principles divided between execution and value principles. Execution being explosive, focus, iteration, and quality. And then we have value principles that are the ones that tell the team how we want to relate to each other, right? So collaboration over competition. We love feedback, so we are radically honest. Relentless evolution continues to be one. And then we have a couple more that tell the team how we like to work together as a team.
Um, it sounds also a bit like a challenge, right? To implement these principles. Well, you have stuff like excellence, enjoying the struggle, however, collaborate as a super important topic that requires probably also a bit of guidance from your side, that people are like, okay, well, it's excellence over everything, so therefore I should will just focus on my merits,
Yeah.
and not work together with other in a cooperative manner.
Yeah, that's something that in Latin America, so basically Symetric is a Colombian company, right? Colombian company made currently probably by 90% Latam talent and then 10% rest of the world between Europe, Asia, United States, and so on. So in Latam, people tend to be more towards the building together rather than working for myself and on an individual level. So that's something that's easy to implement in Latam, but as we grow globally and in the US, it's a challenge for sure. So that's something we need to start working on, and we've been working on creating a global mindset around culture not being something fixed, because not everyone sees life as we do, right? In Latam, you probably see it with different colors as we do in the US as well. So that's one of our main challenges, and that's why scaling our culture is one of our main goals in the people team.
You mentioned you are now 300 people in 13 countries, and you just mentioned, okay, well, the culture may be different in different jurisdictions. How how was it when you first stepped out of Colombia?
Yeah, so that was 2020. COVID hit, right?
Yeah.
It hits us all. We were kind of reluctant to do remote work before the pandemic. Actually, we were more towards leaning towards building side by side, using blackboards and being on the office and so on. But then the pandemic hits, and we see it as an opportunity, right, to increase our pool of talent around the world. So we start hiring people in Argentina, for example. We start working with people in Mexico. We start working with people in other countries in Latam, Peru, Ecuador. I don't know. We hire a couple people in El Salvador as well, Honduras. We actually hire a developer from Nigeria as we start working remotely in 2020. So it was actually quite a struggle as well. Like I told you, and enjoy the struggle. But um, our culture was so strong when we went from physical work to remote that it just kept going. People just kept working. People just kept attaching and using our principles as guide to behave. And as we continue bringing people from other countries, we started thinking, okay, what differences are from their culture with my culture that could be a challenge for them to understand and interiorize the principles, right? So, for example, one that is quite challenging is we are radically honest, right?
Mhm.
That's a principle we have. Radically honest can be different for you, can be different for someone in Japan, and can be different from someone in Colombia.
Mhm.
So what happens with people in Colombia? Colombians are usually like super nice with others, right? They don't want to, they avoid conflict sometimes. So they usually give feedback in sandwich manners, right? So something positive, then the feedback around the improvement challenge they see, and then something positive to close. When you work with people from Argentina, they just come through the door and tell you what they are thinking. Right? And that happens in other countries. What happens, for example, in Asia? Asians are quite respectful of authority,
Mhm.
right? So they are not going to come through the door telling your manager what they think about their presentation or the way they're
Mhm.
leading the team. So those are quite amazing challenges we're facing as a global company.
So sounds incredibly interesting. How did you address this? So, as you said, for example, being brutally honest is, I think, in some countries, you can implement this pretty easily. In other countries, it's really difficult, and it kind of contradicts the entire upbringing of people, and they would not necessarily probably say this is bad or good, but it's just like just
Different.
completely unknown. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, there are like two parts of culture, right? That everyone has. Explicit culture, the things you see when you travel to a country. So the way they talk, their food, their rituals, the way they dress. But that's easy to see. That's easy to see when someone joins from a different country and so on. But then when you start talking about implicit culture, things from where they see something valuable or not, something right or wrong, morals and so on, that's even harder to understand on simple interactions. So what we usually do is when someone from a different culture joins, we try to get to that implicit culture as soon as possible to understand the way they think and the way they value different aspects and compare that against our culture, right? To help them understand our culture and implement it jointly with their like native culture, right?
Mhm.
Um, and something we've seen that works a lot is two two main things. Thing number one is I believe we've all been raised with the like the golden rule of treat others as you'd like to be treated, right? That's something probably we've all heard, right?
Mhm.
I treat other people the way I would like to be treated. But there's also a global rule, and that global rule is treat others the way they would like to be treated. And when you start understanding this mindset, that's
Mhm.
something that's super amazing because it opens your mind to, okay, maybe I don't have the right ruler to be able to see how the measure on behavior is the correct. So that expands your mind. And rule number two is we don't see cultural fit as black or white, right? So we don't say that person has or has not cultural fit. We believe cultural fit is something that needs to be developed. So we hire for potential fit to our culture, and then we dedicate a lot of time on making sure that person understands and interiorizes our culture.
How do you find this out in the interview process? Whether
Yeah,
someone fits in that culture? You well, the principles you mentioned, they're very strong
yeah,
principles, right? So it's not like, okay, well, I for sure can accommodate, but it's something like, okay, you're full in, or you will have difficult time fitting in.
yeah. They are some of our principles are more of like deal breakers. So, for example, if you see someone that is someone that competes with others for recognition and so on, that's not going to be working for sure. And we're fully transparent with the person. Um, but then there are others that needs to be developed. So for example, I was telling you my story with quality, right? How do we see quality from that excellence principle in Symetric? We don't see quality as a fixed bar. We see it as something that needs to be adjusted for each of the tasks you do. So for example, if I call someone from our payroll team and tell them we need to have all of our payroll information sent to the bank in the next 10 minutes, or we're not going to be able to pay payroll on due date. Um, what I'm expecting from that person is three columns: name, amount, account number, and send it to the bank, right? That's something you can do in 5 minutes. I'm not waiting for this person to have like a beautiful spreadsheet made of a lot of formulas and beautifully presented. But if I ask the same person to prepare a headcount historical, for example, for a due diligence or something like that, I'm not going to wait for that person to do it in the five next minutes. That's probably going to take a couple days, right? But the excellence level, the quality levels of that task is going to be way better. So that's how we see excellence, and that's something that you can see in the way you interview people on how they approach tasks, right? And when you personally ask them when how they describe the quality of their work, their personal brand right now, right? So they start talking to you. So do they see quality as a fixed thing or as a thing that needs to be adjusted? And when you start exploring and probing those kind of things is where you see if there's potential with our culture.
Um, can you give us an example how you approach this practically? So how do you find that out? So, well, I do get this, a good do get the concept. However, how do you ask for it, and what do you observe in people when you talk to them?
Yeah, we have competency based questions attached to our principles, because that's something we usually need to do to be able to track that down. So what we do is ask competency based questions around each of our principles. So for example, if you ask someone, um, when was the last time you had to be a part of a team where you need to work together with others, and they tell you their story, and you start probing on how they behave, if they who took recognition, what's the kind of recognition they'd like, and so on. That's when you start understanding how they behave in the past and how they will probably behave in the future against your principles, right?
How do you make sure that your entire team's on board with 300 people? You cannot really talk to everyone, I think.
Yeah. So basically, we do culture on all things HR, from talent acquisition to onboarding to people development to your probation period to uh, people development, organizational design, rituals, and so on. So this is something we believe culture needs to be repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated, right? So we repeat this constantly, and we actually use culture and our principles as a part of our performance reviews. So when you include this into your performance reviews, people that are only outstanding on results and numbers and sales and code and so on, but not outstanding on your culture, are people that usually don't get promoted, usually don't get long-lasting relationship with the culture and so on. So we do have back and forth conversation on focus groups, on one-on-ones, on these all hand sessions about culture. And these conversations are not something that is here, have the principles and let me know how it goes, but are bilateral conversations, right? To understand how people are getting along with our culture.
um, since culture plays such an important role in your organization, how do you view developments around technology? So is well, technology in the space of HR something that you think will help you going forward to focus more on developing a great culture? Or what are your considerations there?
Yeah, so I think the HR tech stack you use needs to be fully aligned and be flexible to adjust to your culture. right? Because if, for example, you have like a traditional HR tech stack that treats your employees and team members as just a number, that's not going to be working. If you have like a traditional org chart that tells you you are level 15 in the ladder, that's not going to help you foster a mindset.
How you empower people, right? Level 15.
Yeah, that's right. So those small details you use on your HR tech stack and your processes and so on are also messages, right? Are also messages you're sending to the team. And if you go and tell the team, okay, we are not a horizontal company, we have verticality and levels and so on, but we do have a mindset of round table, right? So regardless your level or years of expertise, your insights are going to be valuable, and your challenges are going to be always received. But if you say this, open a roundtable to everyone, and then you show a organizational chart when you see you need to scroll down to see where you're at, that's not going to be matching, right? So I do believe tech stacks need to be a partner for your cultural organization development. I believe there's a lot of good options out there, but you need to be really careful to make those two messages match for sure.
Andres, I have two last questions. So first of all, can you tell us a bit about what you guys actually do? So
Yeah,
what's your product? What's your service?
for sure. So Symetric, as I told you, is a Colombian company. We are a P2P enterprise SaaS company that basically allows financial operation teams to automate their reconciliations, both financial and operational reconciliations, through no code and generative AI. That's what we do right now. We focus on big enterprise because the problem we solve is bigger and bigger companies. That's mainly the reason we do. We are probably market leaders in LATAM. We handle two-thirds of transactions in LATAM, and we're also expanding globally, as I mentioned before. We have presence in Asia right now with some traction in that area, and we're exploring Africa as well. So yeah, that's what Symetric does. Basically, I could answer you in an analogy. We build symmetric building blocks, and those building blocks, we have like 75 building blocks, features and so on, allows companies to tackle their personal or customizable use cases, right, to have those automated reconciliations around operational and financial operations.
Cool. Andres, the last question I have for you is the following.
Yeah.
What would be a question you would pose to one of our future guests?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, something that I would like to see others or understand how others are thinking is, so I believe the market is like divided in two right now. Like companies that went remote and are pushing their teams to go back to the office, right? And companies like us that don't want to be back to the office because the possibilities on a remote team are huge, right? So my question to others would be, what are the challenges HR professionals are going to be tackling when you have such distinct side of the companies, right? So you have traditional people joining companies like Symetric, or people in Symetric joining traditional companies on the other side. So how are we going to develop a global mindset in our new workforce?
Perfect. Andres, thank you so much for your time. It was super interesting to learn how you approach culture and how you make, how you created a 20 people company, or how you turned a 20 people company into a 300 people company. Super impressive story. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Ben. We're scaling our company right now to almost 400 in the next couple of months. So I'll let you know how it goes on scaling our culture for 50% more.
It's crazy. Thank you so much. It was great talking. Just thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben, for having me.
And thanks all of you for listening in, and see you next time.